2, 1.
Welcome everyone to my channel, Beth Bell Live. I'm happy to have you here, and I'm also happy to have a live studio audience today. So it's going to be a lot of dynamic interaction, questions about heartbreak, anything that makes your heart ache. So I thought I would start out with a little story first, so you can start to prepare yourself on the questions. If you have one and you're watching us live on Facebook or YouTube, you can write them in the comments. And if you're watching this on replay, you can always go to bethbell.me/question and submit your question. Now, while we are live, if you go to bethbell.me/question, which is a little bit more of a private way to ask a question, I won't get that question until next week's show. So just so you know, if it's an urgent question, please put it in the comments on Facebook or on YouTube, and we'll be sure to put you in queue, and we'll put you ahead of the queue, actually, if you're watching us live. So thank you for joining in, whether you're live on replay or you're here in my studio audience. Thanks for being here. The first thought I wanted to share was I actually was just back home in North Dakota, and I had some really profound thoughts and realizations that came through that I wasn't expecting. I've visited many, many times. I lived there for the first, third of my life. And this time I went with a different lens, feeling heartbroken about Native American Indians. And it was interesting how this all came about. I'm going to make it a little bit short to say that as I arrived there, I remember thinking, I hope that I bump into, one of the chiefs or someone that's like part of the Native American tribes. And I didn't. There was no one on my flight. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to ask my parents if they want to go to the Heritage Center. And I just want to tune in to what happened way back then, because what I'm realizing now with everything that we're doing with awakening and spirituality, we're actually getting back to what the Native Americans were trying to teach us so many years ago. And that is working with Mother Nature, working with source intelligence, working with cosmic intelligence, however you want to frame the energy and the, some people call it God, some people call it the universe, but source intelligence that helps all of us and is within all of us and that we're all part of, that really important aspect of being connected to Mother Nature in that way was taken away by, let's just say, white men. That's how we were referred to back then. And there was a massacre that happened way back when with the Native American Indians. So what was interesting was I didn't bump into an Indian chief, which I knew was a long shot. I didn't actually end up going to the Heritage Center. But what happened was they just happened to have their annual powwow where Indians from all over the state and probably from other states come, and they actually do this ceremonial powwow. And it was magnificent, and it called in spirit in a way that many of us don't do. And it actually broke my heart just a little bit more to know that there was such a beautiful activity and such a beautiful connection that they had. And we came in, I say we collectively, people that were more, colonized back then, and said, no, we can't have this connection. No, we can't, live off the land. We need to have four walls, and we need to have separation amongst each other and our brothers and sisters. And so that's one of the things that's weighing on my heart that's a little bit heavy, is just that heartbreak of how in a society that we had such tribal, community-oriented beliefs, and how we just destroyed it all and really took that away from them, and how I think we're all trying to get back together to it. So I think that's the positive note, is that as we recognize this, we can start to feel like, gosh, what would it be like if we were back? I'm not saying we need to live in teepees or, we need to be doing traditional powwows, but a lot of us are in the spiritual community. We're getting together and we're doing kirtans and we're doing these community events. So I wanted to bring that forward because it's heavy on my heart and something that I also just want to honor in what the Native American Indians brought to us. All right, today we have a whole plethora of questions that were pre-submitted. I know we've got some that are burning in the studio audience here. And if we get anyone on live, we will jump in to some of those questions. So I'm going to jump to one that was pre-submitted, and we'll start with that one today. I have been doing work with a Kundalini teacher to help me to wake up and to come out of this fog that I have allowed myself to remain in for way too long. I feel that my heart is partially blocked and similar to the state that you refer to in your heart assessment work. What emotions are most frequently being repressed that are in the way of my opening and reconnecting my heart and with the hearts of others? What comes through on that is that I actually am feeling that your heart may be relatively open. Now, I know that you said you thought it was blocked, and it may be, but it's that heart-mind connection. And I feel like it's your mind that has more of the block than it is your heart, because I'm feeling energetically that your heart is actually like big. I don't think you'd even be here asking this question if you didn't have a level of open-heartedness about your character and who you are. So I feel that it's really the mind. It's going in and mastering the mind that is going to connect you into that. So how the question is, emotions are most frequently being repressed that are in the way of my opening and reconnecting with my heart and with the hearts of others. And so I would monitor your mind. So I call it mind monitoring. And sometimes the best way to do that is through journaling. So when you start to hear yourself get into those mind loops, and I know it's not always easy that you can like pull out a journal, but make a mental note of it. Maybe even pull out your phone and start writing in the notes section, hey, I'm just recognizing I'm having this thought. Because the first step is recognizing that that thought is there and then shifting the thought, right? So there's a mental block more, I think, than a heart block. And if you get to like, what are those mental narratives that keep coming and playing those tapes, like we talk about tapes in our head, I think that's where you're going to actually do some of the unlocking, because you're listening to that voice. You're listening to that tape more than you're listening to your heart. I think your heart is there. So basics, but take a deep breath. So especially if you're out and you can't start journaling, right? Because that's not always appropriate. Just take that deep breath, that deep breath in, and hold it for a second and just let it out, right? And it just kind of calms us down and it brings us into our body, because then we go, oh, wait a second. I've just been listening to my mind and my mind has crazy things to say, right? And when we really tune in and we allow ourselves to feel, then you don't repress the emotions that you naturally do, because you've been taught to do that somewhere along the line. Usually in childhood, we're taught to suppress that emotion. And then we attract relationships and people in our life that tell us to do the same thing. Don't cry about that, or what are you upset about that for? Or, I'm the one that's hurt. Why are you hurt? So all these different things happen to us that just reinforce closing down our emotions. And so I think you need to just really feel into, what is the emotion I'm experiencing? And then allowing yourself to have that emotion. And sometimes it's just saying to the person, oh, wow, I feel really nervous at this moment. I'm making this up, right? I don't know, but you're in a social situation and you feel like your heart's closing, but it's really your mind telling you these crazy stories about why you don't fit in or whatever it is. And then you just really tune into yourself and also say, and of course you use discernment and judgment, because you might not be in the right appropriate situation to say how you're feeling. But if you are, just stretch yourself a little bit and say, gosh, kind of make light of it. I feel really anxious at this moment. And I don't want to, because I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. And sometimes just those small little nuances about what you say can open up the other person to realize that, wow, like he was really vulnerable with me right now. And then you kind of open up to it. So hopefully that's helpful. I think it's your mind that's locked and blocked more than it is your heart. I think your heart is big, it's juicy, and it's ready to express itself, but it requires a little bit of practice and being vulnerable about saying what's on your heart and not suppressing what's on your mind that isn't true. It's not who you really are. All right. Let's go on to the next question. If we have somebody in the studio audience, I'm happy to jump in and take someone here, or should I keep going on to the next question? Anybody want to jump in with your question? Okay, great.
Hi, Beth. Thank you for this opportunity. My question for you is, what would be your advice when a daughter refused to talk to her mom? What can the mom do?
Yeah, that's a tough one because there is a soul contract there. So there's some reason that you and the daughter, assuming it's your daughter, I don't know, maybe you're asking the question for someone else, but there is something there in that soul contract that is precluding you from having the deeper relationship that you want. So, and do you mind? Could you just be right here? That way I can sort of talk to you and everybody else. But yeah, or you can back up a little bit. But I think that it's a soul contract that you guys have together. And is it your daughter? Can I ask that? Or is it not? No.
Friends.
Your friend's daughter. Okay. So that helps me for the energy, like who I can tune into. Um, it's a soul contract that they have. And it's a deep one because it creates a lot of heartbreak and heartache to not have that connection to a kindred soul, someone that we give birth to, somebody that we love, from the moment that they come out in most cases until the moment that they leave us at 18 or whenever that age is. So I think, first of all, recognizing that there's a beautiful lesson in the heartache, right? There is heartache here, and allowing yourself to feel that heartache. It's also about communication. And I get the feeling that there's been a lot of effort at communication, and that, yeah. And so you're saying yes. The word that comes to me is acceptance, that there's a level of acceptance that needs to come first. And when the mother accepts that this is where the daughter is at, for whatever reason, even if it feels crazy, feels like a crazy reason, feels like a reason that's not true, like that's not what I did, or that's not what I meant, those feelings, that when we just accept that this other person has this emotion towards us, or this block towards us, or this yeah, just wanting to really cut us out. And in some cases they want to intentionally hurt. The child actually wants to intentionally hurt the parent because something happened along the way that through their lens said, this was wrong. You did something to me that was wrong, and I'm going to hold it against you forever. Right? And they might. And that might be how the soul contract ends in this lifetime, but it doesn't always have to be. And the only person we can ever shift is ourselves. So that mother needs to shift within herself. And I think that's why the word acceptance was coming so strongly, is accepting that, wow, I'm in this soul contract. My daughter's in a totally different place than where I'm at. I want to have this loving connection. I don't even know what I did, or maybe I do know what I did, but that's not what I meant. And accepting that daughter for the emotions that she has, because it's human nature that when we feel validated and we feel heard, it softens us. It softens our heart. And I think the other thing that's so important in this situation is that the mother not have an expectation that, oh, if I soften my heart, oh, if I accept you, that then I want something back in return. Because it takes sometimes lifetimes for these soul contracts to untangle and to dissolve. But when we shift ourselves, that is the best way to shift someone else. So I feel like this person has done a lot of the work. So I'm not discounting any of that, but it feels like there's acceptance that needs to take place, and there's a no expectation, right? And just a true unconditional love. And I think this person would say, if she were standing here, I feel like she would say to me, but I have loved her unconditionally. And all I'm saying is that your lens of unconditional love is not being seen in the same way of the lens of your child. And so the real goal here is to do as best you can to understand the lens of your child first, right? Seek first to be understood, to understand, then be understood, right? And I'm not saying that this person hasn't done that. I'm just saying that there is a nuance that's deeper. It's deeper, and it's a perspective lens of which both people are coming at it, that in order to shift it, in order to change it, it's got to happen within her. And she has to find peace and happiness and acceptance with the way this is, which I know is the hard part to do. And I think one of the ways, because I always love to give people tips, what comes through is to write down all the things that you unconditionally love about this daughter. Just write them down and feel into that open heart space, because then you start to open your heart and you start to anchor in that love that you really have for her, not the that frustration, right? Because it's hard to stay out of the frustration when you have that, right? Like, I don't know why I don't know why, I don't know how to do it differently. You know, it's all from the mind. It's all the mind trying to figure out who did what was wrong, what was right, what makes sense, what doesn't, what do I do? And it's like, back to, how do I feel? How do I feel? I love this person. I love my daughter, and I love her for all of these reasons. And I want to stay in that love. And I'm going to emulate that love from my heart, right, out to her every day. And maybe that, if this person has a practice of meditation or whatever it is, that there's just like 3 things every morning. I'm so grateful for my daughter for this, and this. And that love that emanates on another level and another plane, on a spiritual contract soul level, has the biggest potential to shift it in this lifetime. So that's where I would go with that. Is that helpful?
Yes.
Is there more that you want to add, or is that?
No,
That's good.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for asking that question.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. We can jump to another pre-submitted question, or if anybody else wants to jump forward. Okay, we'll go to another pre-submitted question. Okay. I'm in my early 50s and in menopause. I've gained 20 pounds in the last 2 years. I know I'm supposed to love myself and my body, no matter what. But I'm really struggling as I don't recognize my body anymore. How do we as women deal with this reality and the inevitable changes as we age? Especially if we don't want to go down the plastic surgery or Ozempic road. I think Ozempic must be the shot. So what I'm going to say, I know that you already know, and that is that you need to love every wrinkle, every bit of cellulite. And yeah, they're all character lines, right? They're experience globules. I don't know why that comes to mind. I guess because spirit's being funny to say that, you know, we really judge ourselves for the cellulite. And the character lines, the wrinkles, yeah, you can go do Botox. You can do all these things. There's nothing wrong with any of it. But if you don't love the wrinkles, because those wrinkles, they're your smile, you know, they're your frown, it's all your life experience. It's the food that you've eaten, it's the metabolism that you have, it's the energy and the flow of spirit of your unique soul impression in this physical body. So we've got to get back to that unique expression that I am here to have and exude, to experience life with myself and with others. And the only reason why we don't do that is that society around us tells us how we're supposed to look, right? It's this idea that there's a perfection that we're supposed to obtain or maintain, and youthfulness. And I got to tell you, I mean, I'm getting older, and I sink into the wisdom that I have and go, thank you. Thank you. I am so happy to not be, and I'm not saying that young people aren't wise, because a lot of them are coming in wiser than any of us that have been on the planet for many, many years. But it's the wisdom that we carry that's so important. And I just think that those character lines, yeah, I get self-conscious of it sometimes too. And I'm like, oh, I don't want those wrinkles, but I just love them. And when I don't love them, you can go get Botox. You can go do plastic surgery if you want to, but none of that's going to change how you feel about yourself, right? Because you go get plastic surgery and there'll be another wrinkle. There'll be another thing to do, right? So it's shifting that energy within you to know that your soul's imprint in this lifetime is so unique, and all the experiences that you've cultivated, the good, the bad, the ugly, they're all here creating who you are. And your only job really is to just love and be loved. And without loving yourself, that makes it harder sometimes for other people to love you. It shouldn't be that way. We should just be able to run around and just unconditionally love each other all the time. But we know that we came here as a human being to have this life experience. And so just love yourself and love the youth that you see outside of you, and recognize, like, oh, darn it, I just compared myself to that young 20-year-old, and that doesn't make any sense because they're in a totally different life stage. They're doing a totally different life experience and experiment. And so just be really happy with everything that you've endured and come through in your life. And yeah, even the scars, whatever. I know this isn't for you, but sometimes we get nicked. We got scars on our face, on our back, on our whatever it is, and just love that scar. The more we pour that energy and that love into our physical body, it raises our oxytocin. It makes us younger simply by loving ourselves, because we aren't in the cortisol and the fight and flight and the I got to be somebody different and I got to look this way and I got to do this thing and nobody's going to like me or people are going to judge me. It's all silliness. And yet I know that sometimes it hurts and it does have an impact on us. So feel into it. I'm not saying like ignore it, but if you get something that's coming forward and you're like, I don't like my thighs, then love your thighs, right? Because you had a lot of fun eating whatever you ate. Some of it's genetic. Maybe there's something you can do that's a new challenge to try to reverse those genetics so that you can lose weight in an area that maybe you saw in your mom. Make it fun. That is the ultimate goal here on planet Earth, is to make it fun, whatever the challenge is, and to learn the lesson. And so I think you're on it. You're in this beautiful space of being this wise woman. You've gained more pounds than you want right now. There's just more of you to love, and there's more experience and wisdom in every ounce of you that you can have out into the world. And sometimes feels like it just came in. So I don't know if it's for you or if it's for the collective, but sometimes we gain weight because we want to be seen. Like it's our own, like, I want to show up. Like we've hidden ourselves. And again, this could be for the collective. We've hidden ourselves and we just want to be seen, and being a physical presence helps us be seen. And so there could be something there energetically that's also, and I think as we grow older, we also oftentimes, not everybody, but we can become more confident and just like, I'm not going to let all these little things impact me. And I'm not going to worry about how my pants fit. I'm just going to have fun. And so don't kick yourself for allowing yourself to just have fun. And then the last thing I'll say is just like the complete obvious is just eat well and exercise well as you did in your youth. If you're going to compare yourself to the youth, then you have to also behave like the youth, right? So do what you can. And I know that you are, but do what you can to actually do the physical activity and to do those younger things, which means you step out on a ledge and you're not just so ingrained in your routine and your mindset that you don't, jump out there and do something different and maybe go out dancing until midnight one night. That's something you would have potentially done in your 20s. So why not do it in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, right? Okay. Hopefully that's helpful. If not, please put in the comments. I'm happy to elaborate on it. If you're not with us live, I can do it on next week on the replay. And again, for anyone here that has a question, if you're watching us live, please type it into the comments and we will put you ahead in queue to answer those questions. And in the meantime, I always like to say this, and I meant to say it up front. What is your state of the heart? If you go to bethbell.me, you can fill out the state of the heart assessment, find out where you're at. Are you blocked? Are you broken? Are you healing? Are you whole? And there's some tips, tools, and techniques that you'll get in the following emails as a result of your state of the heart very specifically. So don't miss out on that if you haven't already done that. Okay. Do we have more questions? Maybe somebody from the studio audience. Okay, good. We've got another question coming up.
Yeah, you touched on this a little bit a couple of questions ago, but I was raised by a guy that was very emotionally available, and I wanted the validation, the pat on the head. I wanted that my whole childhood, and it affected me in my adulthood. And I just had a really, maybe still do have a hard time forgiving him for that. I just wanted that little tiny bit of, hey, I'm here, can you pay a little bit of attention to me? So I guess my question is like, what's the best way to try to move past that whole thing? I have gone through different phases in my life. As I get older, I'm able to understand him a little bit better, which it's hard to do when you're really young. But so it's shifted, but it's still there.
Yeah. Yeah. What comes through is, number one, I don't know if you've done this yet. I feel like you have to some degree, but you need to get really, really angry. Get really, really angry about that, because that's like a place in you. It's a suppressed emotion of like just wanting to be seen and validated by somebody that you love so much. And I don't mean that you need to be angry. I just mean that suppressed emotion results in anger. And sometimes anger, we want to view it as like such a negative thing. And yet it's not, if we do it in a way that's productive, right? Because it can just blow the doors off of a lot of really sunk feelings and emotion that you've held on to for a long time. The other thing that comes to mind is, I'm not trying to give your dad a pass. However, your dad learned that behavior from someone, and it's most likely his dad or his mom. Somebody did this to him and told him at some point, do not show love. Do not be vulnerable. And there's a story behind it. The story could be that they got taken advantage of, that they were good-hearted people. But, because of their good heart and they wore their heart on the sleeve, I don't know if this is the case, but they got taken advantage of. And then they said, whoa, I got to harden up, and I'm not going to show my poker face, or I'm going to keep a poker face. I'm not going to show my cards. And that was instilled. And, I know from my ancestry, and I don't know that this is yours, but I know we kind of come from the same place in the globe ancestrally, right? And that's the other thing, is this comes ancestrally. So it might not even be your dad's dad. It could be like your dad's dad's dad, right? I know for mine, they were Scandinavian, they were settlers, they settled in North Dakota, they homesteaded. Man, they had to work hard and be humble and suck it up and don't show emotion. Even the women, like, you just gotta keep doing it. You just gotta keep going on. And they couldn't be emotional. It's like they just didn't have the luxury of being emotional. And I think sometimes, because we haven't experienced that in our lifetime, it's like in your childhood, you didn't have to, well, I don't know what your childhood was, but you didn't probably have to endure some of what they endured ancestrally back. So when we start to, again, not like say, oh, everything's okay that you never gave me love, but you go, oh, there's probably a lot of history to that. And I would venture to say that your dad suffered a lot of not getting that as well. And the fastest way is to close your heart to not experience heartbreak, right? So he taught you that. And what I'm getting is that the buck stops here, that you're actually the one that is called in on a soul level, on a like a family level, to like stop this. I don't know if you have children, but if you do, you have the ability, just by healing this within your whole heart, within your heart, back to wholeness, that you can help change that for your children or anyone that you come in contact with, right? That you can actually go, oh, wait, where did I emulate my father's closed-heartedness? And where do I want to open my heart? And then get to that place of thankfulness and gratefulness, like, thank you for showing me this lesson that's so hard to learn. And now I see where I actually emulated something I really don't like about him to other people I love. It doesn't have to be your children. It can be other people that you really love in your life, where you go, ooh, yeah, I didn't reciprocate. I didn't say I love you when I wanted to, or I didn't hug you when I wanted to, because I was so scared to open that box of heartbreak. Right? And so it's ancestral, and the buck stops with you. You're bringing it forward today for a really good reason. And I feel really excited about, like, it brings emotion to me, because I feel that you have such a big heart. And it's like, when you actually open it, like, wow. I mean, the energy that you're going to put out into the world, and I know you already do this, so I'm not saying you don't, but I just feel like it's like a whole new level for you. And I think it's going to be important that when you do open your heart and you do get vulnerable, that you also recognize that it's not always going to hit you the way that you want it to, right? You're going to get those, the spirit always tests us. We make one step forward and we get, bam, you know, like, let's test him. Let's see if he's really ready to open his heart. So it might not be all peaches and cream is what I'm saying, just to kind of gauge that, like, yeah, I'm going to open my heart and then someone's going to stomp on it. Right. And then I'm going to go, oh, right. That was the lesson. I'm just being tested. I want to open my heart. Opening my heart is more important to me than keeping a closed heart and not expressing my emotions and not feeling my feelings to the greatest degree. One other thing that comes to mind that might be really helpful is something called family constellation work. If you're not familiar with it, I'm happy to give some insights for you on some ways that you can go about doing this family constellation work. I have found it to be tremendous because it goes back the ancestral line and lineage, and it also helps you to be able to give back that emotion, that heartbreak that was like the core first heartbreak, right? Because it's not yours. I'm not feeling that this is yours. It's your dad's. It's your dad's dad's. It's maybe your grandfather's. It happened way back there, and now the buck stops here, and that's exciting. Is that helpful? Is there?
Really good.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else in the live studio audience that wants to go, or should I keep going here on the pre-submitted? Okay, I love it.
Hi. My best friend is such a great person, but I feel her partners have never appreciated her, yet she seems to always find the same type of man. So, how can I help her, or how can she break that pattern?
What comes to mind immediately is that she needs to love herself. That she's attracting wounded souls, hurt people hurt others, and that there's an element there of wound bonding, where it's actually what we do in relationships. We actually attract people into our life based on wounds that we have that we want to heal. Sometimes we heal them and then we stay together, and sometimes we don't heal them and we break apart because we recognize, like, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. But we still, no matter what, we have to get the lesson. So whether we get the lesson with that partner or we keep attracting more and more and more of the same, it's always going to be the work within her that has to happen. So she still has to come to a place of loving herself and saying, what is it about them that I'm seeing, right? Because she's asking them to be a mirror for her. I know it's like, we don't think this because I'm sure she's a beautiful woman that's like so big-hearted and has all good intentions and, is with these men because she wants to help them and all of this. But we always have to help ourselves. You know that analogy, like where you have to put the oxygen mask on you first before the child? I feel like her energy is, and maybe this is for the collective, and maybe it's not specific to her, but her energy is, she's trying to put it into the person or the partner as opposed to herself, to help them, because I think as women, and this is again a generalized statement, but as women, a lot of times we want to help other people so much, but we prioritize other people over ourselves. And when we still just need to, oh yeah, I got to heal what's in my heart, because they're reflecting something to her saying, yeah, there's something about yourself you still need to love. Otherwise you wouldn't be attracting us. You're attracting all of us guys line by, next, because there's something within you that is still screaming for you to recognize about yourself. And when she shifts that, so how can she shift that? How can she really get into that? I would do a simple exercise of get a little journal out and say, okay, just whatever, however far she wants to go back. Let's say that there's 5 relationships that were really significant to her. And she says, this is the person's name. And here's what I felt about this person, or here's what happened. And then do the same thing for all 5 people. And then just look for the patterns and look for the pain points, right? Like, how did they hurt me? And then start to see how they hurt you. And then just flip it around and just say, ooh, okay, what is it about me that I want them to reflect this painful pattern to me? And then how can I shift it? So just number one, just the awareness of what the pattern is. Maybe she has that already, but if she doesn't, just knowing what is that awareness will really, really help her to get to the bottom of like, what is it that I need to shift? And then I would start listing the things about myself that I love and that I have to offer in relationship. And I would feel into those things and be like, wow, like I really want someone that will honor me for all these beautiful things that I know that I have to contribute to a relationship, and really focus and anchor in on that energy. And then if there's things that you want, that you want in that partner, write those down too. Like my new partner, I want them to have this, this, and this. So make that little list, but then ask yourself the really important question. Do I have those things that I'm asking in that new future partner? And if not, then those might be the juicy bits to get to, right? Those might be the things that you go, ooh, because you want to align with your partner. Yeah, there's going to be nuances and there's going to be things that you're opposites on, like opposites attract. So it doesn't mean that everything has to be perfect. Just saying energetically, like if there's things you really want in that partner, then just ask yourself, am I that type of partner right now? And if I'm not, ooh, thanks. You just give me a little bit of something to work on, right? And it's sort of that journaling process and that self inner reflection process that I think will really help her break that pattern, especially when she just I'm sure she already knows like what the pain points are because she's been suffering them with multiple relationships. But if she uses some of those other techniques, I think it'll help her get into what is it about her, that she can really shift. And the other thing that comes is when she first meets someone, listen to what they tell you, because people will tell you in the first 5 minutes who they really are. And you know what we do, especially as women, is we build a fantasy around what we want them to be. And it is not who they are. They've already told us who they are. But we don't want to believe it because this and they have that. And so I would say when you first meet someone, listen to what they tell you. Go home and reflect on what did they tell me that they are, right? As opposed to like, what's their potential, or what do I want them to be? And I think that will also, help her a lot in the very first part of the relationship. And then just be like, yeah, nope, right? Move on. And I know sometimes that's hard, especially as we're, more mature and wise. We're looking for other mature, wise individuals. And sometimes it feels far and few between, but they're out there. And then I think just visualizing like what that partner looks like and sinking into the what did I say, 3 or 5 things that she writes that she loves about herself and that she has to offer in relationship, and asking spirit, her higher self, to, hey, bring that guy forward that's going to love me for all of those things, not like keep me in this loop of learning this pattern that I don't like. Is that helpful?
It is, yes.
Anything else you want to add, or
No,
okay. Okay.
You
Okay.
gave me something to help her with too.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Yay. Okay, a little technical difficulty here. All right, so while we fix the microphone, I think I'll jump in really quick here and take one that's pre-submitted. All right. Any tips for couples to not have a marathon headspace chat about problems to solve in a long-term relationship? Yeah, I think, what happens is we get so bogged down with, there's so much in the past, right? There's like so many things in the past that it's hard sometimes to sort through to even get to it. And I think that's where it's helpful for both people to separate for a moment, and to stop talking about it from the mind and start writing separately about how I'm feeling and what do I want to feel. So here's how I'm feeling in this relationship, and here's what I want to feel. Then get back together after you've written these things down, so that it's not, because otherwise it's just everybody is wanting to be heard. And then everybody's just trying to say, well, this is my perspective. This is my perspective. But nobody's actually just trying to understand, well, how do you feel? And here's a tip for men. I'm not saying this should be right, but it just is oftentimes how it is, that women have a lot more feelings about things, and they need to talk about, I always say, the shades of gray when things are really obvious for you. Women have a ton of emotions, and unless she gets to feel them and express them and be heard, even if they're ridiculous, they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. And I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying it's oftentimes how it works. And the man has such an easy way to come up with a solution. So, and the solutions are often really wonderful, and they're really streamlined, and they work. But until a woman is heard. So, and then a man gets hurt because he's given solutions for how many years that the woman just like threw out the window, and then he stops giving the solutions. And so that's where the disparity comes in. Like, I'm done giving you solutions, and she's done saying how she feels because she's never heard and he's never heard. And that's why you're sitting there and you're having this, how do we get through all of this mind space discussion? It's because you're in the mind. You have this whole dossier of stories that you've lived through and that you've repeated with each other, when at the end of the day, there's a core wound that each of you have that you're probably connected on. But the main thing is you just need to be seen, and you need to be heard, and you need to be heard about how you feel. And it depends. Sometimes one partner is better than another on expressing how they feel, because sometimes we just have blocks. We just cannot say how we feel. Like, we know we have a feeling, but we can't say it. And maybe that's a time for writing it down, and not having the pressure of, like, two heads talking, and then coming back together. Like, maybe it sounds remedial, but I would love to see this. You bring your notes together and you say, okay, here are my notes. I'm going to read my notes, right? Because then your notes are about, here's how I feel. And you start talking about how you feel. And I think you're going to start to see a different shift, because you start to feel validated for how you feel. And again, it's not, we don't have to say that your feelings are right or wrong. Well, it's right that you feel that way, or it's wrong that you feel that way. It's just acknowledging, oof, wow, I get that you feel that way. Thank you for sharing with me how you feel. And then the doors start to open more. But we've got to get out of our logical minds, because we're never going to win in our logical minds. The mind is strong, and it has narratives, and we've got to get back to the heart space, because you're in the relationship because you want to have a partner that you can share your heart and your soul with, and your life with, and a plan with, a partner plan, a lifetime plan, typically. And if it's not, maybe your soul contract's over. But I think if you find that your partner doesn't want to take that extra step to, like, really write it down or to go sit with it, and they're like, yeah, I just want to go do something else, then I think you're faced with, okay, well, maybe our soul contract is up. Maybe we're not going to grow more together. And so maybe there's some difficult conversations to have around that as well. So I think feel into, like, the most important thing is, do you both want to grow? Are you willing to grow in the relationship? Because if you're not, then yeah, it's all a moot point, isn't it, at that point? If you feel like you've grown as far as you can and you're shut down, then seriously talk about how your heart is shut down and how you feel about that. Not go back into the storylines. You've rehashed those way too many times. So hopefully that's helpful. It's hard sometimes to get out of the stories, but we've got to get out of the stories, and we've got to get into the heart of the matter, right? And find out, what is the status of your heart, honey? Tell me. And maybe that's a daily exercise. Like, hey, what's the state of your heart? And you genuinely want to know. But especially if you're a man, you got to be ready for a lot to come out, because it's oftentimes not. And again, I know I'm making general sweeping statements. It's masculine, feminine. It's not always man and woman, but women have a lot in there that they want to share. And so if you ask, you got to be ready to listen, not just ask out of obligation. All right. We're coming down to the close of the show. Do we have any more questions from the live studio audience? Is there anyone that wants to ask one more, or? Yeah. Okay, great.
Hi. Okay, how do you get over a breakup, heartbreak, and how long should it take? And I know there's the whole, if you're together 3 years, it takes 3 months or whatever. So how do you do that?
Okay. How do you get over heartbreak?
Yeah.
You feel it. You have to feel it. because oftentimes what we do is we get really defensive in a way, like with ourselves, like we want to protect our heart. So sometimes we like, oh, I'm not going to feel that, or I'm not saying this is you, it could be for the collective, but I'm going to go be with somebody else. I'm going to run off and I'm going to stop the pain from happening. And I'm just going to do something that makes me feel good. Now, there's some validity to that, right? Because I'm not saying you like just sit at home and eat ice cream. You can do that too, but everything in moderation. So you want to feel your heart, you want to feel your feelings, you want to feel the heartbreak. And then I would go back to an exercise similar to what was brought up with the other lady, and that like write down like what was the reality of this relationship versus my fantasy of this relationship. Because a lot of times that's where the heartache is that they didn't meet our fantasy. And so when we start to get real on that and we go, oh, well, if they didn't meet what my genuine, and I don't mean fantasy loosely, I mean like that could be like, that's like your list of criteria. That's what you really want. Like they're your non-negotiables, right? Then go back to that. And if they didn't meet like those core non-negotiables, then you got to start to move into like the gratefulness of thank you for letting me recognize this now, whether now is 1 month in, 3 months in, 6 years in, because now is the only time we have. We can't focus on the past. We can't, cry over spilled milk. We got to go, oh, okay, now I know. Here's what's my non-negotiables and here's where they're at. And I have to meet them where they're at. And if that disparity is too great and they're not willing to do the work, or they don't know how to do the work, or they just aren't going to do the work, then we go, oh, thank you. So we kind of get to this place of gratefulness for the relationship. And I know that's hard because there's companionship. There's like all these beautiful feelings that we feel with people, even when we know they're not right for us, even when they're not the person for us to build a long-term relationship with. So it may be that you still play out the contract a little bit, but that you start to do it in a very conscious uncoupling way, right? So that might help with heartbreak in the future. Like I'm not saying that this is for now. I'm just saying what's coming to me, that when you're asking about in general about heartbreak, you got to start identifying what's making my heart ache while I'm in it. What's aching right now? What's the emotion? What's the feeling? And then feeling into, I'm communicating with my partner. My heart's breaking. My heart's aching. Here's what I can feel. Here's what I know. Here's what I don't know. And if they're willing to be that sounding board for you to be like, oh, hey, honey, okay, well, let's work on that. I don't mean to break your heart. Then you got something to work with, right? I think heartbreak actually starts to happen long before we actually allow ourselves to feel it. It starts to happen when we get disappointed in the relationship, right? That ultimately leads to, oh, we're breaking up. So let's try in our relationships to not go for the big like whammy heartbreak and go for the, ooh, I feel heartache right now because when this happened, it made me feel this way, right? Or I felt, maybe not made me feel, but I felt this way. When this happened, observation, I felt this way. And see what they say to you. And then you'll know, like, do I have something to work with here? And they're like, yeah, I don't care. Well, then shoot, get the heck out, right? I mean, like, if they don't care about, it's not an argument about what happened. It's like, this happened through my lens of observation, through my heart, through my hurt, through my who I am right now today. This is how I feel. And then talk it out and work it out. And then if you can work it out, then you'll, oh, okay, work through that next. Because that's what relationships are. We have relationships. And I'm not saying you, I'm saying again for the collective, we have relationships all wrong. We think, and I'm not, again, it is for the collective, not for you, that someone else isn't here to make us happy. Somebody else isn't here to make us whole. Like we think that in partnership, because that's what we've been told is that, oh yeah, we get a, for a woman, we get a man, or a man and a woman, or women and women. Oh, and then I'm whole. And it's just not really what it is. Every relationship is here for your growth. Every relationship is here for you to learn from. And when the learning stops, that's when I think the relationship ends. And if we think about it more like that, then we're focused on, hey, is this guy going to grow with me? Because if he's not, you can stay in it, but it's not going to end up in a good place. You're going to end up, the things like that phrase about, I don't know exactly how it's stated, but the things that bugged you when you got married, they're only on steroids when you get divorced, right? So unless you do the work together on them, and oftentimes we don't, because we stay in the bliss, we stay in the companionship, we stay in the fun, and we don't get into the depths of it. And so I think we can I don't want to say that we're going to avoid heartbreak 100%, but I do think we can avoid some of the super agonizing heartbreak if we do the heartache work along the way. So there isn't a specific time. Yeah, to your point. I mean, I know that's where you're headed with it. Like, it doesn't matter. You can be with someone 3 months and you can have the most profound heartbreak versus somebody you were with for 3 years, because it's a soul connection you have, and the deeper the soul connection, and the bigger the wound that you're connecting with this person on, that causes the depth of the heartbreak. So the heartbreak can be massive, even, as crazy as it sounds, like it can be massive after 1 month of being with someone, because you could really be deeply, madly in love with someone because they opened your heart in a way it's never been opened before. So I'm not someone to say about time, but I just think we have to also use our discernment around, like, there's only so many nights that we're going to sit, watch movies, and eat ice cream, right? Because then we do have to, like, and pick up our our big girl panties and, like, get off the sofa and move on. So acknowledge the feelings, feel the feelings, and then really just look at, how do I want to not attract that in the next one, or attract it in the next one? Because until the wound is healed, you're still going to attract someone who's going to help you with that same thing. And we're just looking for people out there to help us. Help me heal myself back to wholeness, because it's all we're here to do, is heal ourselves and then share our love with others. And that's really where we want to be when it comes to relationships, and help not really avoid heartbreak, but soften the blows and get the lessons, so that it doesn't have to be so dramatic and traumatic, along the way. Does that help? Or is there something more?
No, thank you.
Okay. Yay. Okay, I think now we are down to the wire, and I so appreciate everyone tuning in. If you want more tips, tools, techniques, modalities, we've got the Awakening and Healing Handbook on bethbell.me. There's also the Psychedelic Resource Guide. So if you have any interest in spiritual medicines, or maybe you know someone who does, it's a great guide to give you lots of tips about maybe how to go about it. And there's also the Herpes Handbook, which gets into a lot about herpes specifically, but also about mind viruses. We've got to get through virus shame. I think we all understand that now more than ever. And whether it's herpes or any other virus on the planet, we want to get back to a sense of wholeness within ourselves, and to work through any shame that comes with viruses in general. And if you want to go deeper, you have a question, you can always submit it on bethbell.me/question. But if you want to really have that personal, you can also sign up for a one-on-one session with me. I'm happy to help work through whatever is heavy on your heart. So we're here to help get through heartbreak, heartache, and stop the suffering and get back to the bliss in life. All right. I hope to see you next week, every Sunday, 11 a.m. Pacific time. And until next week, wishing you much bliss and love on the journey. Namaste.